I can't believe I'm making this video, but on Thursday morning, Terry Rozier has been arrested by the FBI. Charania had the report. This ongoing gambling investigation and probe, we didn't know where it was heading because the NBA said Rozier had no wrongdoing, and we have seen Malik Beasley be probed, and we've seen how that situation has progressed and played out. But Rozier's was kind of on the back burner. No one was really paying attention to it. And then Charania had the report early this morning that he has been arrested by the FBI, and they will hold a press conference talking about the investigation and the arrest at 10 a.m. Eastern time, which is probably going on as you're watching this video, or it already has gone and passed. But either way, Terry Rozier, the Heat guard, has been arrested by the FBI. We're going to talk about what this means for his contract and what it means for the Miami Heat roster. But this is why you subscribe to the channel, because we will update you on all things Miami Heat. And this does have a massive impact on this ball club. So we're going to break it down right now. All right, so there's a lot to go through here. Let's start with what happens to his contract. So after doing some quick digging, under Section 12 of the NBA CBA, any player dismissed or disqualified for gambling violations is immediately banned for at least 1 year. I know the NBA said Rozier did no wrongdoing, but if the FBI is confident enough to make a legit arrest, then I would have to imagine the NBA is going to ban him for at least a year for gambling violations. What does this mean to his contract? Well, it becomes null and void, which means no pay, no roster spot for Miami, and there is absolutely no appeal as well. If he wanted to be reinstated, it would require approval from the NBA and the NBA Player Association a year from now. Now, here comes the financial aspect of it. Section 19 covers player involvement with betting or fantasy sports companies. Rozier's under this provision, and the league, if they deem that this is all accurate and they're going to go with the FBI, they can automatically terminate his deal with the Miami Heat, which means his contract, done, over. And we've talked a lot about his contract, $26.6 million hit this season. He's got $24.9 million in guarantees. And if he was on the Heat roster past January 10th, that contract becomes fully guaranteed, which means the Heat could have waived him before January 10th and saved about $1.7 million. Now, there is going to be a lot of questions about what happens to the Heat salary cap. Okay, so once a contract is voided, it is removed from the team's salary sheet. But the Heat will now get multiple options at their disposal. So, for example, right, Heat currently at $186 million in their salary cap, above the salary cap, and just underneath the luxury tax. Remember, the Heat don't want to go into the luxury tax this season. Well, if they ultimately have Rozier's contract voided, it's off the books. Their salary cap for this season drops to $159 million, which is obviously about $28 million underneath the luxury tax, giving them a ton of flexibility for the rest of the season, whether it be trades or they can go out and quite literally sign anybody in NBA free agency. Now, they still are over the salary cap, which is 154.6, so it's not like they would be underneath the cap spot. But this creates a ton of flexibility for Miami in trades potentially, where they could take back $10-15 million more in a trade than they send out, which could just make sending contracts out so much more easier and to get a deal done. But this trade also allows if Rozier is ultimately terminated and that money comes off the books, because they dropped so far down below the luxury tax, they now have the Jimmy Butler trade exception at their disposal, which is $16.1 million. What does that mean? Miami could quite literally just trade that $16.1 million trade exception for someone before the trade deadline. Now, I want to make this clear. You can't trade an exception alongside other players to make salary match. It would just have to be, oh, we're going to trade this exception for the $16.1 million contract guy or below, and you don't have to match salaries. It's just, there it is. There's the money. Boom, we're good. So it's almost like you're buying a player at the trade deadline that a team would be willing to get rid of. Now, what team would be willing to just trade a $16.1 million guy that it would be borderline good for the Heat to retain and to add to their roster for nothing? I don't know. Probably very few and far between. I could look into that over the next couple of days and we can make a video on that. But the Heat would have that at their disposal, which creates a lot more flexibility. But obviously, this is the big thing here, is that they would have unbelievable amount of space. Think about this. They're now $27 million under the cap, or the luxury tax, excuse me, and they would then have multiple roster spots open because they're currently at 14 after waiving Precious Achiuwa. They lose Rozier down to 13. Remember, the Heat are required, as every NBA team is, to have 14 standard NBA contracts. So they would have to sign someone to a standard NBA deal pretty much within 2 weeks. I think they give each team 2 weeks to fill that 14th spot. But Miami could easily get to 15 because no one on the free agent market is worth $10 million, right, for one season, not even close. So they could sign anybody on the free agent market to a standard NBA contract and not have to worry about the salary cap ramifications. So Precious Achiuwa could return. They could go after a guy like Alec Burks. They could do a lot of different things. But as we continue to go in this video, one-word reaction to the Terry Rozier arrest. I'm stunned. Give me yours. Stunned was my one word because I actually thought, I knew it wasn't closed, but I did think that this thing is pretty much come and gone because there really hasn't been any discussion about what has been going on here. But yeah, can't believe it. He is actually arrested. So as we progress here, we're going to look at some free agents that the Heat could ultimately sign. We know Trey Lyles is an option, big man playing over Real Madrid. Precious Achiuwa could absolutely return. We know they have had interest in bringing back Alec Burks in the past. Ben Simmons is certainly an option as well, although I don't really know if that is the best move for the Miami Heat. I don't really think there's a ton of good free agents out there because, listen, they're free agents for a reason, right, guys? Like, you can't expect for the Heat to sign someone elite. The where this actually comes into play for the Miami is if they make a trade. That's got to be the one, like, right? You could look at all the positives and the money situations. It saves the Heat some money for sure. But the way that this impacts Miami positively on the basketball court is allowing them to make a big trade at the deadline where they take in more money than they send out, and it gives them more flexibility and more options to work with in a potential trade. It also gives them that trade exception that they can use. Now, like I said, I don't really think there's a ton of guys out there that will just be traded away for essentially nothing. So I don't know how you use it. We'll see if they ultimately do. Trey Lyles, Alec Burks, Precious Achiuwa, probably the top three players that you may see ultimately return to Miami. All right, as we close out this video, I do actually want to note that Terry Rozier wasn't the actual only one to get arrested here. They also arrested the Portland Trailblazers head coach, Chauncey Billups. No one really knew. I think he was under investigation. That was a surprise. But either way, Precious Achiuwa could be returning to Miami because Terry Rozier was arrested by the FBI. Chauncey Billups was arrested by the FBI. And I just kind of at a loss for words on this episode, but wanted to make sure you guys were covered with the news. So appreciate everybody for watching this video. We'll have a show out sooner rather than later about what's next for the Miami Heat. And talk about what Miami could ultimately do with this potential new money that they found more in depth, because I just wanted to give my initial reaction today. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter at Nick_Roloff, and we'll have you covered every single day with Miami Heat news.